Good morning. All right, so JTolan Media has commented, and boy, is it a doozy. Let's have a look. All right, make it a bit bigger. All right, so Ruhif, just saw your video. Are you serious? Yes, I am. I gave you 3 graphics and you still don't believe? Correct, because all 3 of your graphics are shit and they all have errors. All right, so let's see. You did not address the calculated height of the utility pole measured relative to the car. Why? Instead, you try to cast doubt on the true height of the pole based on some Google pages. Very lame argument. It's a bit hypocritical, I think, to call it lame, because I'm not the one that quoted an obviously wrong website, which has since been corrected, by the way. Anyway, we'll get to the utility pole height in a minute. Blah, blah, blah. You're quite amazed at the discrepancy and think Google Earth is ultimate reality. So you go around measuring a nice flat football field in a different area to support your view that Google Earth is accurate. So a bit of special pleading here about how distances are correct everywhere else, except this one little spot where you said you measured the height of the turbine. I mean, you can go and measure all sorts of things on Google Earth, like running tracks, tennis courts, like airport runways are a really good one as well. And they're all incredibly accurate. But this one tiny spot that you happen to be building this bullshit narrative around just happens to be wrong by about 50%. So obviously that's bullshit. By the way, we actually know which turbine you measured with your rangefinder, and it ain't the one you use as a scale in your video. And when you make mistakes and don't correct them, I'm going to keep calling you a liar. All right, blah, blah, blah. Are you even aware how it calculates the ground distance and what that means? Yes. I can't actually remember whether it was the Haversine or the Vincenti formula, but I did actually have to work that out at one point. It was about 2 years ago now, I think, and I won Wolfie 6020's Search and Rescue Challenge, and part of that was writing code external to Google Earth, but had to give the same results as Google Earth. Like I do remember there was a bit of a quirk where the distance between A and B was actually different to the distance between B and A. So Google Earth actually averaged it. Anyway, not really important. The formula they use is obviously accurate because you can measure things on the ground. All right, what else? Blah, blah, blah. Are you aware Google Earth uses tiles of satellite images and fuses them together? Blah, blah, blah. So yes, that's what they do, and I do know how it works. It's kind of the opposite of ray tracing. So in ray tracing, you build a 3D scene, and then you set up a camera and an image plane, and then basically fire light beams into that scene and see what it hits. And that's how you build up the image. All right, in Google Earth, it's kind of doing the opposite. So you've already got the image plane, which is the satellite photo, and now you're projecting those points onto a 3D surface. And if you project it properly, then you won't get distortion. What you're seeing with the turbines is when the surface doesn't match the actual terrain. So Google Earth has a roughly level surface, but there's a whopping great big turbine there in reality. So the turbine itself will be distorted. A really good analogy is the Mercator projection. So the Mercator projection is a flat 2D map, but the distortions on it are enormous, particularly as you get closer to the poles. But when you unproject it, like we did with the reverse ray tracing, the distortion disappears, and that's what's happening on these Google Earth images. All right, and then down the bottom here, as if he's found some gotcha image. He goes, gotcha evidence. He goes, then measure the car on the road between windmill 2 and 3, and you get something like 16 feet. So just to show off a little bit here, here is my magnificent house. This here on the left is a Mercedes GL 500. It is 16'8", and this is a Volkswagen multivan. It's 16 foot 1 inch. So pretty bizarre comment there. And I think you've just kind of fucked yourself. All right, on to the utility pole. All right, so here's the street view photo from his post. Now, what I find incredibly interesting about your analysis is that it's pretty obvious that the car is actually closer to you than the utility pole. So why didn't you adjust your 5 feet at the distance of the car and scale it to the distance of the power pole? Oh, that's right. You need the power pole to be 30 feet because you need the turbine to be 150 feet because you need San Jacinto to be, what, 6,500 feet. Anyway, this is getting pretty freaking ridiculous, but let's do it properly. All right, so all I want you to see here is that the far power pole is lined up fairly close to the edge of this car. So we're just going to use that to confirm that we've got the right spot on Google Earth. All right, so here's the exact spot on Google Earth. But before we jump into Street View, just have a look at the pattern of bushes off to the side of the road. We've got this big one, a smaller one, and both of those are set back a little from the road. And then we've got this one, and this fairly long one here. All right, let's jump into Street View. All right, so we'll check out the pattern of the bushes. All right, so we've got that big one and smaller one set back from the road. And then we've got this one and then the long one. Let's go and check out the alignment of the car. All right, we'll zoom in a little bit. All right, so obviously that is the same Google Earth image. So we are definitely in the right spot. All right, so have a look at where the car is in relation to the line markings on the road, and the back of the car is pretty much right at the nearest end of that line. But I did actually go and check some old satellite images just to check if the lines have been recently painted or something. So this is the one here. You can see that this one's got a little tiny difference, so we'll take that into account when we measure. All right, so let's measure from the exact spot. Let's measure to where we think the car was. Come on, there we go. So we'll say about there, I'd say. So that's 127 feet, and then we'll measure to the power pole. And that is about 167 feet. All right, now I made you a really pretty spreadsheet just to show you what you should have actually done. All right, let's stick in the distances that we just measured. So it was 127 feet to the car and 167 feet to the pole. All right, so you should have scaled your 5-foot car height back to the utility pole and made it 6.57 feet at that distance. All right, so now what we can do over here is basically use the formulas that you had in your video. We can get an approximate height of that pole. So it was 6 Fiat 500s high, and each of those scaled to about 6.5 feet at the distance of the utility pole. That gives an approximate height of 39.45 feet, obviously way different to your 30 feet. We can get a more accurate height by using your formula here. So the theta we use in this one is the arctangent of 6.5 feet divided by 167 feet. And then we have 6 fiats on top of each other. And when you plug that into this formula, you get an accurate height of the pole of 40.18 feet, which is obviously a lot different to your 30 feet. And then when you multiply it by 5.3 rather than the 5 you have in your image that scales the utility pole up against the turbine shadow, you get an approximate turbine height of 213 feet. And that's obviously a lot closer to the official height of 226 feet and nowhere near your 150 feet. All right, so feel free to call me an armchair scientist, but I'm still kicking your ass from about 7,500 miles away.